Good Friday, everybody. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us on the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Plenty of Browns to talk about. Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter, will be joining us. Mike Cairns will give us a Buccaneers perspective on a potential Odell Beckham Jr. heading to Tampa Bay rumors. We'll also check in on the high school scene with high school beat reporter Matt Goul from here on cleveland.com. But we begin with some news in the NFL and free agency that Browns fans are going to want to listen to. Guys, take a listen to J.J. Watt earlier today.
I wanted to do this on video as opposed to putting out a statement or doing a press conference or anything like that, because I want you guys to hear it directly from me. I want to speak directly to you and the city of Houston so you can hear the words straight from my mouth. I have sat down with the McNair family and I have asked them for my release, and we have mutually agreed to part ways at this time. I came here 10 years ago as a kid from Wisconsin who'd never really been to Texas before. And now I can't imagine my life without Texas in it. The way that you guys have treated me, besides draft night, I mean, you guys booed me on draft night, but every day after that, you treated me like family. And I truly feel like you're my family. Since that day, I have tried to do everything in my power to work and earn your respect and try and make you proud on and off the field. You guys have given me everything and more, and I can only hope that you feel like I've given you everything I have. The city of Houston's been unbelievable to me. It's where I met my wife. It's where I've met lifelong friends and my teammates. I've had incredible coaches and training staff and equipment staff and cafeteria workers and the weight room staff and the front office people and people on the streets, people in restaurants and grocery stores and showing up at my house. The connection is special, and I will never, ever take that for granted because I know how rare it is. I'm excited and looking forward to a new opportunity, and I've been working extremely hard. But at the same time, it is always tough to move on. And I just want you guys to know that I love you. I appreciate you. I appreciate the McNair family for giving me, drafting me and giving me my first opportunity in the NFL. Thank you, Houston. I love you.
J.J. Watt, a free agent. Let's welcome in Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter. So, Dan, I think there's probably a new #1 hit for Browns free agents right about now. If they pursue Jadeveon Clowney like they did last year, there's every reason to believe that they will go just as hard after J.J. Watt this season.
You have to. You owe it to yourself as a franchise to see if J.J. Watt wants to come to Cleveland. And welcome to being a team that might be able to sign some ring chasers this offseason. You want to see if J.J. Watt wants to come here and be your #2 pass rusher. Now, look, J.J. Watt had a really good year last year. I think he's still got some stuff left in the tank. He also has had some struggles staying on the field. He hasn't played 16 games back-to-back since 2015. He played 16 games last year, so you've got to be aware of that, and you've probably got to add more than just J.J. Watt to make sure you're covered. But if you're out there looking for pass rushers, and the Browns certainly are looking for pass rushers, you've got to make a call on J.J. Watt.
And the other thing is, can you imagine a better guy to put opposite of Myles Garrett to ensure that you can't double-team one or the other?
That's what you're looking for. When you look at all these free agents, is you're looking for a legitimate #2, not just a part-time guy, not just a guy that you aren't sure about. And J.J. Watt is one of those guys. I've mentioned another guy from New Orleans, Trey Hendrickson. Now, he'd be more expensive, so maybe J.J. Watt fits too in the fact that maybe it would only be like a 2-year deal, which I think would be something the Browns would want to do for a guy who's on the wrong side of 30. But yeah, that's what you're looking for, is that guy that you consistently put on the other side of Myles Garrett so the teams can't just focus on him. And if they do still focus on Garrett, J.J. Watt's going to go and finish some of those sacks.
The other thing, there are a number of intriguing free agents. And again, we've talked a couple of times. Mindset has to be the Browns are looking to upgrade that defense, kind of like they did with the offense a year ago. Cornerbacks, there's a couple of them that are intriguing. Let's start with Richard Sherman. You interested in him if you are making the moves with the Browns? He has said he likes Joe Woods. He wants to play for Joe Woods. That's a free agent.
I'm absolutely interested in Richard Sherman. This is a guy who is a veteran, brings an attitude to the locker room, has that chip on his shoulder, isn't afraid to say what he thinks. You know, he was a little critical of the Browns not hiring Robert Saleh a couple years ago. Had that little handshake gate with Baker Mayfield where he claimed Baker didn't shake his hand and then retracted that. But you know, when a guy can come to a locker room and help you win, a lot of that stuff gets forgotten. Knows Joe Woods, and Joe Woods knows him. So I think that's a natural connection. And I'm all for the Browns approaching this offseason with, we're going to sign a veteran who maybe we're going to look at as the starter when we sign him. And then maybe we're going to draft a guy right behind him. And maybe that guy we draft is going to be better. Who knows? But I like the idea of stacking positions on that defense with free agents, you know, veterans like Sherman or a guy like Watt, and then adding somebody else in the draft at that same position.
Yeah, that gives you the ability not to play them until they're ready to be played, which, you know, hey, what a concept. Browns haven't been able to do that forever. Another guy, another big name that is out there, Patrick Peterson. Cardinals a couple years ago was an athletic freak, you know, one of the best lockdown corners. Not sure he's quite there at this point in his career, but he's still a really good cornerback.
He is, and again, that veteran guy. Now, if you had me choose between the two, I think I'd prefer Richard Sherman. But I think Peterson is a guy that maybe with the change of scenery he's never going to be the guy he was a few years ago, but you know, he can still come in and he can help you. So I think any veteran that's out there, the Browns need to look at. If they think that guy has anything left in the tank, I think they need to go look at that guy, because that's the point where they've reached as a franchise where, you know, the cap is down a little bit this year. There's a lot of teams that are going to have to let veterans go and make hard decisions. The Browns are going to be in that boat in a few years, but they're not now. They get to benefit from that. So they owe it to themselves as a franchise to go look at every single veteran, if they have anything left in the tank, and see if they fit in their scheme on either side of the ball, and see if they're interested in coming to Cleveland.
Let's flip the conversation just briefly. Who are some of the guys you want the Browns to retain that can be free agents? You've got a number of them. You know, Olivier Vernon's hurt, so you know, his number will be pretty low. Higgins, Goodson, there's a number of them. Who are the guys that, you know, let's really find a way to get this guy back?
Vernon is really interesting to me. We don't know when he would be ready to play again. We don't know how he would come back from that Achilles. He's at that weird age where we just don't know, you know, how that Achilles is going to affect him. Now, it's interesting. In the NBA, we've seen older guys come back from Achilles injuries. You know, Kevin Durant is one of those guys that's playing really well off an Achilles. I don't know how that translates to the football field, but we're seeing guys in that year-old range who have had success coming back from that. If you could get Vernon on a reasonable, I don't know, couple $1 million, kind of stash him away and see if he can help you down the stretch run, I wouldn't be opposed to doing something like that with him. You know, he really played well for you in the second half, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's not an expensive thing. Higgins is really interesting too. I'm curious to see how the Browns approach that. I don't think you just let Higgins walk, but at the same time, you've got so many resources tied up in that receiver room. Something's got to give there, because this isn't an offense that uses a bunch of receivers. So Higgins is a guy that bring back, because he's got that connection with Baker Mayfield. And he's just there when Baker needs him to be there. And you might have to make some other moves elsewhere, but I would bring back Higgins if the price is right.
So Pro Football Focus has kind of done a projections of what guys will make and where they might sign. Higgins, they project 2 years, $10 million, and they think he's going to the Titans. If it's 2 years at $10 million, you've already got 30-some million tied up between Landry and Beckham. Is it reasonable to think Higgins might be able to get $5 million from the Browns?
You know, that's where it gets interesting. He could, but again, like I said, once you start paying all these receivers, you have to look at this offense and wonder if it's the right thing to do. We know this is they like to use 12 personnel. They like to use 13 personnel. You know, those 2-3 tight end sets. I don't know if they ever played 4 wide receivers on the field at the same time, outside of maybe a stray Hail Mary attempt or something like that. This has been an offense that plays at most 3 receivers in normal situations. So at some point, you do have to look at how you're spending your money at that position and say, how many guys can we actually pay here for it to make sense? So there probably is a breaking point with Higgins. I would think 2 years, $10 million. That's a pretty easy contract to manage. And if you moved on after next year, whatever it looked like, I would think that's a manageable contract to give him.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So Pro Football Focus had the Browns signing a receiver, Marvin Jones Jr., 3 years, $27 million. And again, I think he's a really good NFL wide receiver. I don't think he fits into, and I know he's a bigger target. They need somebody that can open up the defense a little bit, take the top off it, if you will.
Look, a few years ago when the Browns hired Hugh Jackson and Marvin Jones was a free agent, I was like Marvin Jones' agent. I wanted him in Cleveland. I thought he would have been a great fit here. But that was back in 2016. I don't think that's the way to go right now. I think there's other receivers out there you can look at if you're going to pay a guy. You know, if you don't want to keep Higgins, if you want to get a speedier guy, there's other receivers. You know, Curtis Samuel's a guy that I really like. Again, I don't know what he would cost. I don't know if he would want to come to Cleveland, but he's a really intriguing fit in this offense. So I'm not sure that Marvin Jones is the right kind of guy that you're looking for.
Yeah, Pro Football Focus had him signing with the Giants, 3 years, $25 million, which, again, that I get that he's kind of that missing element. He's got the speed. You can throw underneath to him. You can run him across the field and try to get guys to chase. There are some elements that he would bring to Kevin Stefanski's offense that I don't think the Browns have right now.
They don't really. You know, they do a lot of different things with Jarvis Landry, but, you know, again, he's not that speedy guy. He's not that guy that, you know, is always going to break big plays. He's not your downfield threat. Curtis Samuel can kind of do it all, like you said. And so if you're making me choose between Rashard Higgins and Curtis Samuel, I might lean towards Samuel because he can do more. He's faster. He's more versatile. These are the decisions you have to make now as a front office. Everybody loves Rashard Higgins, and his story is great. Nobody believed in this guy, even going back to like week 4 of this season when he was barely playing. And he worked his way in, and he really won over this coaching staff. But you've got to start making hard decisions. And if you're looking at this roster and you're saying, okay, Rashard Higgins can help us win, but maybe Curtis Samuel can do more and help us win more, those are the sorts of decisions you have to make as an organization.
Before we take a quick break, what position do you think is most likely to be addressed by a veteran that can step in and provide it? Do you think it's cornerback? Do you think it's linebacker? Do you think it's defensive back? Or is it something on the offense? Where do you think they sign the free agent, the Jack Conklin of this year, if you will?
I would keep an eye on edge rusher like we talked about, you know, with whether it's J.J. Watt, whether they pay a lot of money for a Trey Hendrickson, whether they go after a Yannick Ngakoue, someone like that. I would really keep an eye on that position, and then again, maybe stack that with the draft. And then number 2 on that list, I would put the other position we talked about is cornerback, because I think you need to have a guy that you know can start and play well opposite of Denzel Ward. You don't know what Greedy Williams is going to give you. You could draft a guy at 26 or draft a guy in the second round, but you just don't know how those guys are going to adjust to the NFL if you throw them into the fire. So I would really look at those 2 positions that we talked about earlier. And I actually might put cornerback number 1 as what I'm kind of watching for them to add a veteran.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we're going to look at how some national pundits view the Browns in terms of where they sit in the NFL going into next year. The Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
Do you like Ohio State football? Would you like to get information from me, Doug Lesmerises, about Ohio State football without having to look at my face? We have got the plan for you. Become an Ohio State text subscriber through cleveland.com. You send a text, 614-350-3315. What do you get? 2, 3, 4 texts right in your phone every day about Ohio State football. Inside information, polls, voting, all kinds of things. You can be on our podcast. We take text subscriber questions on our Buckeye Talk podcast every week. If you really want to be involved with Ohio State football, in season or out of season, become an Ohio State text subscriber from cleveland.com. send a text to 614-350-3315. 14-day free trial. What do you have to lose? $3.99 a month after that. 614-350-3315. I'll see you in your phone.
Tri-C is here for you. Now more than ever, you need a post-secondary education. So I encourage you to start your journey here at Tri-C. The majority of fall classes will take place online, but we've added a variety of formats to meet your learning needs, and we've taken many steps to keep you safe on campus. Whether you're ready to get started or your four-year plans have changed, Tri-C is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We're going to continue talking Browns here on the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon, Dan Labbe with me as well, Browns beat reporter. Let's take a look at how ESPN has their football power rankings after the Super Bowl. Super Bowl champs, the Bucs, #1. You see Ravens in at 5, the Browns all the way up at 9, a spot ahead of the Steelers. So, Dan, it seems like the national media is in agreement with us. It's not the same old Browns. They're building, they're moving, and the Browns have some cap space that they can improve on as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of upside with this Browns team. I keep thinking if they can just turn this defense into a top 15 defense, they don't have to be the best defense in the league. They don't even have to be a top 10 defense. If they can just be a top 15 defense and this offense continues to evolve under Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski, they can be one of the best teams in the NFL. You look at those rankings, I can't put the Browns ahead of the Ravens in any scenario. They lost to them twice last year. I think the Ravens, just like the Browns, are going to get better, and they're going to kind of get some of that swagger back when they went 14-2 a couple years ago. So I think it's between those two teams in the AFC North. I'll say this, I think the Steelers are too high. I am completely out on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe that's going to look bad in October when the Steelers are 4-1 and leading the AFC North, but I'm just out on them. I think they were one of the worst teams in the NFL in the second half of the season. The Browns just absolutely smoked them in the wild card game. That comeback at the end, I'm just going to put aside. I don't know what the Steelers are going to do. They have a lot of cap issues. I don't know what Big Ben's going to be. I'm out on the Steelers. I think they're too high on that list. I think it comes down to the Browns and Ravens in the AFC North.
The thing that I think needs to happen with the Browns, and we've talked about it, the defense has to be able to at least slow down an offense like the Chiefs, like the Ravens. That was the issue. When the Browns were playing the Chiefs or the Ravens, the offense had to outscore those potent offenses. And they showed with the Ravens, they can hang with them, but you got to find a way to get stops with really good offenses. And that's why I'm reasonably certain that Andrew Berry is going to address that defense like he did the offense a year ago.
If there are two plays that haunt you in this offseason and that you go back and think about over and over again, it's going to be that third down conversion by Trace McSorley in that Monday night game with the Ravens. And it's going to be Chad Henne scrambling to set up that 4th down and 1. Those two plays should haunt you all offseason. Those were backup quarterbacks, and you let them make plays in key situations, and you can't do that. We saw what Tampa did against Patrick Mahomes. They didn't blitz. They rushed with 4. They covered with 7. And that's really kind of what you have to build. Now, every defensive coordinator wants to do that. But the Browns do have the resources to build a defense with that capability. If they build up that pass rush, if they shore up that secondary, then you're kind of set up to be able to maybe slow Lamar Jackson, slow down Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. You're never going to be able to shut those teams down. What Tampa did to Kansas City is an outlier. But you can at least make it so that, you can hold a lead against them or you can compete with them. And when you do score 42 points like you did against the Ravens, that's going to be enough for you to win the football game.
Who's a guy on that defense that you think might be a breakout guy for next season? Somebody that maybe showed a little bit, but maybe is able to take it to an entirely different level?
I think this is the guy I always come back to, and it's got to be Ronnie Harrison to me, because he showed you so much potential, but he also wasn't able to stay on the field. He dealt with injuries throughout the season. He was never really quite built into this defense the way I think they wanted him to be. But he was brought in to sort of fill in for Grant Delpit. And in that divisional game, you had Carl Joseph and Ronnie Harrison as your starting safeties. And I think the vision here is to have three safeties that you can rely on. So you've got Harrison, you'll have Grant Delpit back, and then I don't know if it's Carl Joseph or I don't know if it's somebody they sign or draft, but you want to have three safeties who can play in this defense on a regular basis. We know we don't know what Delpit can be, but we have hopes for what Delpit can be. And I think Harrison becomes really important in what the Browns want to do. So he's a guy that I kind of harp on over and over again. I'm really excited to see what he can do with a full year in this defense.
And another guy that some people are connecting the dots to is Anthony Harris, safety from Minnesota, predominantly because Kevin Stefanski spent so much time there, would in theory know him. Is that something you think is a possibility?
I think it is. And the Browns, we talk so much about free agency, but I think they'll be aggressive in the trade market too. And maybe that's where they find their safety, is they use one of these extra picks. They have 9 draft picks this year. They have, their first, their second, and then they have a couple of third-round draft picks. And that's where you start to look and say, okay, let's use some of that draft capital just to make some trades and bring guys in. Andrew Berry, and this kind of goes back to his time with Sashi Brown. They did some very NBA-style things. Think about that Brock Osweiler trade where they made the Texans attach a second-round pick to take that money off the books. That's kind of how younger GMs in the NFL are thinking. They're looking at how the NBA does things a little bit, and they're trying to bring some of those concepts to the NFL. And even though the trade market has picked up in the NFL, there's still some inefficiencies there if you can take advantage of it. So I think they'll be very active in the trade market. So it goes beyond free agents.
Yeah, that's the upside for GMs. The downside is the players are looking at what the quarterbacks are looking at what the NBA players do and are rebelling and trying to create a thing where the quarterbacks can name where they play.
Yeah, you're starting to see that leverage. It's like they're realizing, oh, wait a second, we've got all this leverage. Let's start using it. You've just got to hope for the Browns' sake that they've got their guy who's going to be really happy in Cleveland for a long time.
Before we go, let's get into some expectations. What are the expectations for the Browns in Berea, do you think?
I think the expectations are high. I think they were really disappointed with what happened this past season. We've talked about that Kansas City game really being a missed opportunity. And I think the tone they struck coming out of that wasn't, hey, what a great season, things are turned around, everything's great. The tone was, it was really disappointing. And they wanted to go farther. They wanted to get to Tampa and play in the Super Bowl. And Andrew Berry has said that that's the goal. They want to get to the Super Bowl. They want to win Super Bowls. And the goal is to get better every single year and kind of, it's not just one or two players away. It's about looking at this team separately and seeing what they can do in this season and adding to that. And I think they're going to be aggressive. I think the expectation should be that this team can compete and win the AFC. Are they going to be better than Kansas City? I don't know. On paper, probably not. But all you have to do is win one game against them. And they competed with them really well in that divisional game, even before Patrick Mahomes left. So I think the expectation within that building, and I think the expectation outside that building, should be compete for and try to win the AFC.
That's a good thing. You couldn't say that in previous off seasons because there wasn't a track record. So now there's a track record with the same organization in place. And, I want them to be disappointed in what they did. That's what you want from a good franchise.
And it might feel accelerated because they've really only had this 1 year of success. But at the same time, if you kind of view 2019 as this lost year where everything just went wrong, they should not have been a 6-10 football team. That was at worst, talent-wise with better coaching, probably an 8 or 9 win team. They're really sort of at that spot in their development, especially with the cap situation they have. Where they are with how they're paying their young players. They still haven't paid a lot of these guys, or like in the case of Myles Garrett, that extension hasn't fully kicked in yet. You've got an opportunity here. This is your window. It's open. And I think they understand that they've got to go and grab it.
Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. As always, we appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks, Dan.
Yep, thanks for having me.
All right, we are going to take a quick time out here on the Weekend Winners Edition. On the other side of the break, we head down to Tampa Bay We will talk with Buccaneers beat reporter Mike Cairns, a longtime Cleveland sports reporter and anchor. We'll talk to him about OBJ and the cap situation for the world champion Buccaneers. More sports. The Weekend Winners edition will be right back. Stay with us.
A friend of mine brought up Nature Stone.
Our floor was not a nice garage floor. It was cracked and dirty and messy all the time, and it's just pretty. It's a pretty garage floor.
You could tell they really cared about what they were doing. They did an excellent job.
There's a room of lovely people here that have been so nice to us and so great, and such great service from the guys who did the floor, and we just really appreciate that.
And I highly recommend it.
Schedule your free cost estimate today at naturestone.com. It's not just a floor.
Wow, it's Nature Stone.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to the Weekend Winners edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Some national speculation that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers might be a team that's interested in Odell Beckham Jr. We're going to welcome in Mike Cairns, longtime sports reporter anchor here in the Cleveland market, now working for Bay News 9, Spectrum Bay News 9. He covers the Buccaneers. Mike, as always, appreciate you taking a few minutes. I know you followed the Browns. How impressed were you with the Browns? Let's start there.
Pretty impressed, Dave. I mean, I tried to watch as many games as I could when I wasn't covering the Bucs. Just first of all, really impressed with the maturity of Baker Mayfield and just the change that he made from last year to this year, just the way he approached the game. Obviously, whatever Kevin Stefanski was able to do to tailor-make that offense around Baker Mayfield, it certainly worked, because whatever Baker was doing last year wasn't working. But what he did this year and was able to take that young quarterback and do some great things, and defensively the Browns were amazing. So just what a difference a year makes with a different coach and a different style. And it looks like the Browns are set up now for some long-term success. And that's something, as a Browns fan, you weren't able to say even as early as last year. So that's a good thing. And it looks like we could be expecting some playoff runs and maybe even some tight division races down the stretch.
How exciting was it to get to cover a Super Bowl? A guy that so you had to go to Tampa to get to the Super Bowl here, at least before Browns media, fans, and everybody gets to go to it.
I wish I could say it was everything I thought it was going to be, but it was just so surreal under this, the pandemic and the protocols and everything. But still, it's a Super Bowl. No matter how you cover it or where you cover it or how it looks, even with just 30,000 people there. In all the security and all the protocols that were put in place to cover it, it still didn't take away from the fact that it was a Super Bowl. So it was pretty cool. It was my first one, and it only took me 36 years in this business to cover one. And it just so happened to be the team I'm covering. It just so happened to be in my home city. So, I mean, the stars all aligned just for this one Super Bowl. And if it's the only Super Bowl I ever cover, it's certainly going to be one that I'll never forget.
Now, there's some talk nationally that the Buccaneers might be a destination for Odell Beckham Jr. Do you see that being a possibility? The thought was Tom Brady likes him. There's a connection there, and Brady got what he wanted, and usually will get what he wants.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He does usually get what he wants. That's how Gronk and Antonio Brown got here. I read the article. In my opinion, I don't think it's a realistic thing. No way that OBJ is going to take a salary cut to try and fit in to the system. OBJ has always been about getting paid, and even coming off an injury, and not actually he's been injured the last several years. So no matter how close he is with Brady, I just don't see it. I don't think it's a good fit for the Tampa Bay Bucs. And the thing is, now they're already starting to talk about, players are already starting to talk about taking pay cuts to keep the team together. So I think that's more of a realistic thing, because there are a lot of guys that are in line to get paid, and there's several big free agents that the Bucs need to address. And Jason Licht, the general manager here in Tampa, has already said that he wants to keep all of them and bring them back. Now, that could be the euphoria of coming off a Super Bowl, but at the same time, the players publicly addressed coming back in press conferences and Super Bowl rallies. So I don't think that's a realistic thing to have OBJ come here to Tampa, but I think there are other teams that are much better fits with much more money than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Who are some guys that could end up, not fitting in and being salary cap casualties with the Buccaneers? And I'm looking, that's a team that has a lot of players that a lot of teams want. So who are some guys that could be salary cap guys that the Browns potentially might look at?
Well, you got to start at the wide receiver position. That's Chris Godwin. He's definitely going to get paid. There's no question about that. Out of all of the free agents, I think that's probably between him and Shaq Barrett. And Shaq Barrett's played under the franchise tag the last 2 years. Now they could franchise him again, but that would cost a lot of money. And Shaq Barrett has already said his agent's been in contact with the Bucs to start working on a contract. And this was days after the Super Bowl. So I think Chris Godwin's the guy that has to get paid, and is going to be if the Bucs don't address something with him, he is definitely going to be a guy that's going to be a popular guy in the free agent market. But you also have Shaq Barrett, who's been played on the franchise tag. Antonio Brown has said he's wanted to come back, and Ndamukong Suh has said he's wanted to come back. Leonard Fournette, he certainly deserves to be a starting running back somewhere, whether that's with the Bucs or somewhere else. He wants to come back. So those, to me, are some of the big free agents that the Bucs need to address. And they're strapped for cash. They're up against it as far as the salary cap. And the salary cap's not going to get much bigger in 2021. So they're going to have to be creative. They're also going to have some guys rework some contracts. Mike Evans has already reworked his contract and able to afford guys like Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette and players that they had to get last year. So I could see some guys restructuring contracts to try and keep the band together if they really think that if they put everybody together, they're going to have a great chance at another run at another Super Bowl.
Mike Cairns, appreciate the time and the insight as always. Mike Cairns, long time Cleveland sports anchor, sports reporter, now working in Tampa Bay. He got to go to the Super Bowl. Maybe it's the Browns next year. Mike, as always, appreciate it. Thanks. Appreciate it, man.
Anytime, Dave.
All right, Mike Cairns. Well, we're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we get prep. Yeah, we're going to go high school boys basketball, and Matt Goul from cleveland.com on the other side of the break. The Weekend Winners Edition continues. Stay with us.
We're living in uncertain times, but you don't have to put your future on hold. At Tri-C, you can move ahead while staying safe and saving money. The majority of fall classes will take place online, but we've added a variety of formats to meet your learning needs, and we've taken many steps to keep you safe on campus. Whether you're ready to get started or your four-year plans have changed, check out Tri-C's programs and resources, because Tri-C is where futures begin.
Well, hello everyone. Let me tell you a little bit about Browns Football Insider. For only $3.99 a month, you can get texts sent right to your phone each day from me, Dan Labbe, Scott Pasco, and Ellis Williams. In addition to that, you'll receive a Football Insider newsletter every day with special things from us, things that you won't see anywhere else on the site. You'll get breaking news, analysis, features, film breakdown, and things like that. Texting us directly gives you a great chance to cut through the clutter of Facebook, Twitter, other social media, and avoid the trolls. Also, it's the only way to get your questions on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. So why should you sign up? Try a 14-day free trial. You can cancel at any time. All it takes is one text, but you won't want to cancel. We have hundreds of subscribers join us over the last year. They love it and have stayed with us. We're seeing the Football Insider community grow every week, and it's only $3.99 a month, which is less than 14 cents a day. What I like most about Football Insider is the opportunity to connect with you one-on-one and really communicate with you. So how can you become a Football Insider? You can click on cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page. Or easier yet, text me at 216-208-3965. Again, that's 216-208-3965.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant, whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at smiley1.com.
We continue on the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon, and we're going to switch our focus a little bit. We're going to head to high school, and specifically high school basketball. When we talk high school basketball on cleveland.com, got to talk to Matt Goul, the high school beat reporter. Matt, I know you've been all over the gyms and wrestling rooms and ice rinks across the state. Let's focus on some boys basketball. Who are some area teams in Division I that you like, that you think are in the mix this season?
Well, it's quite interesting because obviously we have a revamped district format this year. This is something the coaches wanted. They got it, that plus some with the revamped system where there's pods and teams broken down through 3 or 4 districts. You got to look at Menor, obviously Camp McKinley. They're in the east side of the Division I bracket for the Northeast districts this year. In the west, obviously you got to talk about St. Ed's and St. Ignatius, and all these teams, I think, have an excellent opportunity to get to Columbus or wherever the state championships are held this year. The OHSAA just announced on Thursday that they announced the wrestling hosts. It's going to be 3 separate venues for wrestling this year for state championships. And in the coming days, they expect to announce regional and state tournament hosts as well for basketball. So who knows where they'll be at. But those are the teams, Menor, Camp McKinley, Eds, and Ignatius, who are definitely favorites. And you got to throw Medina in there as well.
Let's focus a little bit on the Menor Cardinals. Bob Krasancic, longtime head coach. They've got some talent. Take me through what you like about them when they're playing well, what we're seeing, and what they need to do to be as effective as they potentially can be.
Well, they like to push the pace, that's for sure. Just Wednesday night, they scored 111 points on Strongsville. It's not the first time this year I believe they've come to 100. I saw them against Brunswick. They scored 90. They scored 90 against – they score 90 a lot. Obviously, Luke Chacon is pushing it. He had 39 in the last game last season against Medina in a regional semifinal. I thought, it's going to be interesting how they would look this year because Luke Floria graduated, big 6'6" forward Chad Rogers graduated, in comes Jonah Wag from Villangelo St. Joe's and Stephen Key from Euclid. And they've got a 3-headed monster with those guards, and Chacon can do it all, whether it's shoot, score, and differentiate and get it to his teammates, especially those two, Key and Wag. And coaches that I've talked to, especially after they play them or before they play them, they just say, man, they're just so tough. They're so efficient. Rebounding is the concern with them because they're not as big last year. I'd say their best rebound, their guards are great rebounders. Wag especially. They need Ian Kipp, the quarterback of the football team, to be a big-time rebounder for them because Chad Rogers really got after it on the glass for them the last few years. So we saw a couple teams have pushed them the closest, like Medina, have controlled the glass. And that's probably the key to beating them, but nobody's done that through 14 games so far.
When you look at St. Ed's, this is a team that graduated 3 guys that are playing college basketball. Grant Hoffman, Devontae Blanton, and Montori Foster's actually playing football, but could have played college basketball. Still, they're right in the mix as one of the best teams in Northeast Ohio and in the state as well. How are they doing it?
Oh, you got to credit that coaching staff. And, of course, Eric Flannery's resume speaks for itself. I mean, he's coaches Team USA basketball at the youth level. And, you know, I think a lot of coaches I talked to had expected Eds to be pretty good this year. You know, I'd say probably a top 10 team in the area. You know, did everybody expect them to be as good as they are? I would hesitate. No, nobody expected them to be as good as they have been playing. Mike Bova, who was their sixth man last year, you know, he's the straw that stirs the drink for them. And Mason Lurch, who's a nice outside shooter for them. Shane McCullough has really been the kid who's a senior guard, who's really stepped up his game this year. You know, he's a hot shooter as well. And that's the thing, Eds likes to play pace at a little higher level, just like Menor. Maybe not as high as pace as Menor, but they like to get going. And Zion Fair-Brown, a linebacker football team's active, we saw there a minute ago. He can get up and go into is probably a great time defender for them. They have the pieces. They're not as big, but they've got some big guys who are developing. And, you know, this might be Coach Flannery's best coaching job, at least in the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, it's been really impressive.
Yeah, it seems like every time we say St. Ed's is going to be down, it's Eric Flannery's best coaching job because they find a way to compete.
St. Ed's is 15 wins, though.
Yeah, that is true. Another team that's always good, St. Ignatius, and you know, they've actually beaten the Eagles this year. So what do they do well? What do they like to do when they're playing well?
St. Ignatius likes to lower the pace a little bit. You know, they have a big 6'6" forward and Henry Rayner. They have some nice guards. John Efforts, a junior, who is a third-year starter for them at shooting guard, one of the better shooters in the area. They have two freshmen that have been playing outstanding for them, and C.J. Little and Carter Jackson. And they have been playing better and better. I got to see them twice so far, both times against Eds, and they really matured the second time I saw them play. CJ, for example, was playing a little bit off the ball a little bit. They were having Efforts play as the point earlier in the year. Now CJ has pretty much picked up the point guard role for them. I'd say the majority of it. And they can play at a high level. They have the athletes to do it, but they seem to play a little bit better when they are controlling things at the defensive end and playing in the half-court sets.
A couple of lines, just another team kind of in the area, McKinley. What do you like about them? What do you see from them?
I think they are the most talented team in Division I from Northeast Ohio. Obviously, they're outside my coverage area a little bit in Stark County, but, you know, Kobe Johnson's going to West Virginia. They added Tay Puri, who was on that Buchdal team that went down to the state championships, state Final Four in Division II 2 years ago. They're loaded. And this is probably one of their best teams. Looking at the traditional layout with CSU as a regional host, you know, they went there last year, lost to Shaker Heights in a regional semifinal, and I pegged them as the favorite to come out of CSU if we have those traditional regions this year. So we'll see what happens for the Bulldogs going forward. Of course, they come from that really tough federal league with Massillon Jackson and Green's still a tough out as well.
Now you look at Division II, some Akron teams are among the best in the state. St. Vincent, St. Mary, and Buchdal, and each of those guys has a guy that, you know, could be in the mix for Mr. Basketball as well.
Yeah, you're talking about Malachi Branham, the Ohio State commit from St. Vincent St. Mary, and Chris Livingston, the junior who returned home to Buchdal this year after a half season at Western Reserve Academy last year, and he could end up at Ohio State in a year or two as well. But it's kind of interesting because these two teams were, I would argue, are the reason why we have blended districts again, because the Northeast District last year put them in separate brackets, expecting them to be two powerhouse teams. They didn't want them to play too early. Of course, Livingston transferred out. He transfers back in. We have these blended districts now. But Buchdal took the Western bracket, far Western bracket, and they're going to head out and go to probably face a Lima Shawnee team in regionals instead of staying closer to home to Canton, which typically has that tough region at the Canton Civic Center with Warrensville Heights, St. Vincent St. Mary as the favorites to get there. So if Buchdal makes a run, they're going to have to probably go through Shawnee if they get out of their district, which they'll be favored to do. But man, would that be something to see them in St. Vincent St. Mary in a state semifinal or a final, depending on how things shake up.
And you're watching Chris Livingston, as you mentioned, top scorer in the area, top rebounder in the area. This is a guy who is a junior and is the fifth-ranked junior in the country. So yeah, he's got some talent.
He's 6'6", guard, and the thing that strikes you about him is how quick he is. You know, he just, especially off the dribble, he's just so quick. And, you know, as you mentioned, he leads our area, which our coverage area is 7 counties, Cuyahoga and the bordering counties. He leads it in scoring, he leads in rebounds, and he leads in block shots. And he's pretty high up there in assists as well. I think he's averaging 5.8. And, you know, some people might say, oh, it's their league schedule. But I'll tell you what, he's consistent. He does that against Lutheran East, against against some of the bigger teams they've played. I've seen against Medina, those types. He is as consistent as they come, and he's got a tremendous cast around him as well.
We touched on Malachi Brannon, and this is a guy that, as you mentioned, committed to Ohio State, a little bit of a guy that plays out on the wing. Again, he just is so polished, so smooth. Again, I believe he's in the top. I think he's 26th in the national rankings that I saw. When you watch him, he is just so smooth. This is obviously from last year because of the packed house that you see. Brandon's another one that's a special talent.
Yeah, and he has some tremendous players around him too, and Sincere Harris, a point guard, and Ramar Pryor, who just committed to Cleveland State. Both are juniors. Branham is just so smooth, and he's a complete player. You know, I actually haven't seen them yet. I'm going to see since the preseason. I'm going to see them on Saturday against Brush, and probably again next week versus Lutheran East. They have a tremendous last 2-week schedule. I mean, they're playing St. Ed's on Friday. You know, they just played at Warrensville Heights on Tuesday. You know, they are a resounding favorite to win the state title this year. They would have been the favorite to win last year, and they had that great regular season game with Lutheran East when Lutheran East was in Division II, and we didn't get it. So we will get a rematch again Tuesday next week. Looking forward to that.
Lutheran East again in Division III this year. So what do you see from them? What do you like about Lutheran East?
Man, their starting 5 is as good as anyone's, regardless of division. Their backcourt, I would argue with anyone who would try to say that there's a better backcourt in Division III than Sir Hughes and Colin Albert. I mean, those two are 4-year guys, came out of Beechwood and been at Lutheran East the last 3 years, and they've just been tremendous. Then you got Jay Billingsley, the Georgetown commit, 6'7" forward, shot blocker. Jared Larry transfers in, moves in from Detroit, the Detroit area. You know, he's another shot blocker at 6'5", has a CSU offer. And really, the MVP of their team is probably Jalen Knott, 6'3" wing, who's you're seeing right there taking the 3. He is as good of a defender in the area as there is. I'd say him and Elmore James of Brush are probably 2 of the best defenders, and Knott does not let up. I mean, when I saw them against Bookville a couple weeks ago, he was on Livingston the whole game, and that's 6'3" on 6'6".
Before I let you go, let's get some names to listen out for as far as Mr. Basketball goes. Who are some names that we should pay attention to that you think are in the mix?
Well, we talked about them already. Branham and Livingston, I think, are the 2 favorites. And the Northeast Inland District is going to have a tough decision because traditionally each district around the state submits one of their players of the year for Mr. Basketball. I think George Mangus from Lima Shawnee will be one. Luke Chacon from Menor will probably be the Northeast Lakes District, which is where I'm a part of, where I vote. But Inland, I think, has got a tough decision. There have been some cases where they have put up 2. And I think this is a year where you definitely could because, man, I really do think it comes down to Branham or Livingston. But Chacon's one to take consideration. And another Inland guy, Corey Tripp. Got to look out for him. He's averaging 23.5 points a game. He's as good as a basketball player as a 6'3" guard, a senior. He's got only 1 college Division I offer, I think, at least going into the season. He's another one to watch out for. So those are the guys who I would probably say are the favorites for Mr. Basketball. And I'm sure there's maybe Logan Duncombe or somebody from Moeller down in Cincinnati, and Sean Jones, a junior from Gahanna Lincoln. Probably other guys that would be in the fold as well.
Matt Goul, high school beat reporter for here at cleveland.com, and also in the pages of the Plain Dealer. As always, appreciate the time and the great insight. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you more and more as we get into tournament play, starting right around the corner here. Yeah,
a week and a half, actually.
Matt, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time.
Hey, good seeing you, Dave.
All right, Matt Goul, the outstanding high school beat reporter here on cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. That'll do it for this edition of the Weekend Winners. Everybody stay safe. Have a great weekend. We will have more Les Levine tributes coming up Monday through Thursday, and then we'll see you again right here next Friday on the Weekend Winners Edition. Have a great weekend, everybody.